Can young writers write masterpieces? Because there is way too much ageism in the writing community that says that if you are 22 years old, that you cannot write a masterpiece, or that if you are 87, you are over the hill and too old to write a masterpiece. And today we are going to focus on young writers who have transformed the writing world to show you guys that no matter where you are, you can be a part of the literary renaissance, which is our goal on this channel, to create an educational and spiritual awakening through literature. And a lot of my favorite authors are disparaging toward young authors. Robert Bly said that no one under 30 should ever publish a word. And his reasoning was that young authors, of course, could build the technical skills to write something beautiful, but that your 20s and even your teen years are meant to be lived in the conscious world. And it isn't until you are in your 30s that you have access to your unconscious in terms of artistic creation. And of course, the number one argument against this is none other than Arthur Rimbaud, who was publishing poems at the age of 16 that were better than 99% of stuff getting published in poetry journals and books today. And if you don't believe me, here's a poem that Rambo wrote at the age of 16. Through blue summer nights, I will pass along paths, pricked by wheat, trampling short grass. Dreaming, I will feel coolness underfoot, will let breezes bathe my bare head. Not a word, not a thought. Boundless love will surge through my soul, and I will wander far away, a vagabond in nature, as happily as with a woman. There is depth, there is emotion, there is a connection to nature, not the self-confessional mew poetry that a lot of young writers and even adult writers write. That is mature and beautiful poetry right there, everyone, being written by a 16-year-old. And when you read Rimbaud's collected works, you are exposed to a writing that can transform your life. You are exposed to something that calls you toward adventure, calls you toward life. How much literature does that? A lot of the books behind me that are literary and are the greats don't make me feel that. Maybe they make me feel sad or contemplative about different aspects of reality, but isn't a push toward life, which is something that all young teenagers should be connected to if they aren't on TikTok, if they aren't on antidepressants, if their parents didn't abuse them, they aren't trying to be cool, if they aren't at school being turned into a conformist and a good taxpayer. And what's crazy about Rambo, you guys, is that there is a weird thing that has to do with talent, that when we say that a 20-year-old can't do it, it's really silly because there was a girl, and I am a high school teacher, that I taught, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago. And I'll say her name. Her name was Isabella. And this was at El Dorado High School in Las Vegas. And she didn't care about English class. She didn't care about her grades. I don't even know if she graduated. But when we did a poetry unit and she wrote poems, she wrote better poems that, with a little bit of editing, could become something that is better than 95% of what is being published today. Better than a lot of you. Some of her stuff was better than the stuff I was writing. And I was like, what the hell? So then I thought, because she was kind of writing about emotions and was somewhat confessional love stuff, I was like, okay, this is a gimmick. She kind of can feel into this and do this. You know, that's possible. So I was like, okay, I want you to write a couple nature poems. So she wrote some, and she wrote one about the moon. And a couple days earlier, at the time, the current poet laureate of the United States, Tracy K. Smith, had released a poem about the moon. I compared the two. One that was in a top literary journal by the poet laureate of the US and this random 16-year-old girl. Her poem was leagues better. And like I said, with some editing, could be turned into who knows what. This girl didn't care. I told her, dude, you could be great. Please come to the Creative Writing Club. Please do something. Just write in secret and put these out online for free. No, not a care in the world. There are so many hidden gems out there. It's shocking. And I confront at least one of these types of students every single year. And so I can imagine if one of these students had the technical training, I mean, it would be insane. And there are people who are like this. David Foster Wallace wrote his first novel, The Broom of the System, a couple months into his fiction writing career and got a massive advance for it. It is a very complicated and deep novel. And it was because Wallace's technical skills were so great that he could just jump into fictional writing and smoke a little bit of weed and suddenly be this creative genius. Now, I won't sit here and say that The Broom of the System will transform most people's lives. But if you understand Wittgensteinian logic and Wittgenstein's views on language, The Broom of the System may be one of the best depictions of Wittgenstein's philosophy in art ever created. That's a pretty big hoop to jump through for a 21-year-old writer who just started a couple months before. And eventually we saw the heights that Wallace could attain in many different fields of writing: essays, fiction, short stories, literary analysis. Wallace wrote The Girl with the Curious Hair and a lot of those stories before he was even done with his MFA, before, at 24 years old. Wallace's short story, Lyndon, in that book is one of the better pieces of art on a president or a politician I've ever seen written. His short story in that, Little Expressionless Animals, is in my top 25 short stories of all time. And he wrote that at 23 years old. He's on that, that top 25 list is competing with Chekhov and with the, Carver and all the other greats. And if you get me sentimental enough, that starts creeping closer to the top 15. And hey, my bad. Sorry for bringing up someone who did something at 21. That's a little old, right? Well, what about Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein when she was 18 years old? How innovative was that? How youthful and genius of an energy does it take to write something not just that isn't innovative and impactful, but beautiful in terms of style? Frankenstein is for sure one of the better classic books. And as you start to understand it more, and the more times I've read it and gone deeper, the more I realize that there's a lot of unconscious messages that she's trying to show the reader, and philosophical messages. That book transformed my life. I have an entire essay over on my Substack you can go read for free about it. Frankenstein, in my opinion, may be one of the best analogies to why you shouldn't hold back your creative genius ever written. When I talk to people about becoming a writer and not using a pen name and not being a coward, I reference Frankenstein a lot of the time. An 18-year-old gave me that knowledge. An 18-year-old has helped countless people overcome their fear of using a pen name and actually standing behind their work like a real person should do. Because a pen name is whatever, if you were going to stand behind it as an individual. Yukio Mishima had a pen name because he didn't like his name, but he was a public figure since the first time he released the novel. By pen name, I mean people who are trying to hide behind an identity online and not actually contribute their human self to the cause of the literary renaissance, everybody. So Frankenstein is better than, I would say, 99% of what people are publishing today online. It does have too many elements of antiquity in it, obviously, but the language, the style, the story, how beautifully it's written, if some of that got converted to modern vernacular, would be better. And she had nothing to go off of. She didn't have the whole history of monster movies. She obviously had mythology. But if you are a young writer, I run a free writing school where I talk about how to build your writing skills, but I think more importantly, teach you how to build an audience in 2024 and get readers, because that is the hardest thing to do. I have many friends who are in their early 20s who I correspond with on Substack, and they only have a couple readers, and it makes me feel bad. And so that's why I've decided to create that course, because I know how to do it, obviously, but I want to teach others how to do it. Because if I really am going to push this idea of a literary renaissance, then we need strategies and tactics on how to do that. Because just posting your writing online and doing nothing, or self-publishing or sending it to a publisher, will not work for 99.9% of you. You have to follow certain steps. Not necessarily with your writing, that is your own journey, but with how you are going to present that and give the world your gift. And so the link to that, among many other links like my book club, my podcast, my Instagram, some of my writing, it's all down there. Go check it out, and let us move on to the next person. So what about John Keats, who wrote most of his best poetry before the age of 25 years old when he died? Ode to the Nightingale. Keats is one of the most influential romantic poets of all time. Once again, a very innovative individual. And now we have people from both categories. This isn't just poets like Rambo and Keats who are riding the wave of emotions. We have stylists who are actually tapping into the unconscious, like Wallace and Shelley. What about Dostoevsky, who wrote and published Poor Folk at the age of 25 years old? And he had it finished before that. What about his second novel, The Double, before he got sent to the work camp? Those aren't his best novels. They're still decent novels. And these aren't gimmick novels either. There are a lot of young people today who get their MFA and write a voice from a diverse perspective and get published. And it's edited by someone who got paid $15,000. And we're like, oh my God, look at that. They didn't have this. They were just doing it. How about F. Scott Fitzgerald, who wrote This Side of Paradise in his early 20s? Do I need to continue? Emily Bronte, Sylvia Plath, Percy Shelley, Christopher Marlowe, H.P. Lovecraft, Lord Byron, Emerson, among countless others, were producing beautiful and transformative works in their early 20s. And so, yes, the MFA system is not helping with this. The creative writing program isn't helping people push out heat. David Foster Wallace pushed out the girl with the curious hair because he hated his MFA program. It was so bad. He hated the professors and just the whole system in general so much that rage helped him produce short stories, which I guess was a result of the MFA program. But what could he have done in a more relaxed and focused state? Something like An Infinite Jest. And the reason I do think that young people can write masterpieces, and I think it is an outlier, nowhere near normal, is that if you are transforming within, if you have these major transformations in your life and you have the ability to document it with good metaphor, that's a transformative novel. Most 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds who are writing and they're trying to make something transformative have to do it intellectually or through this crazy connection to the unconscious or to what society needs. But a young person is connected to all of that. They are it. They are doing it. They are the transformation. And so if you are a young writer, I want to help you. I want to give you encouragement. I want to give you that direction and motivation here on this channel to keep going, because you don't know when you're going to go over. There are massive leaps and bounds that you can make as an author that are unexpected. When I look at my poetry from when I was like 18 years old, it was all kind of the same for a year or two. Like, there were some bright spots, but then suddenly something happened and I got over this hill and my style shifted dramatically. And it was that way for 6 or 7 years of some of the most active writing of my life. And suddenly those were good poems. Some of those poems will end up in the book I'm publishing soon. But during that time, I was growing, I was transforming, I was thinking about writing, I was consuming writing. And so this goes for anybody. But if you are young, if you don't like what you are doing right now, you have no idea how close you are to the next level. I've been to the Cormac McCarthy archive, everybody. And you can read the third draft of Blood Meridian. It is terrible, you guys. It would have only 1-star reviews on Kindle. It would have no one to publish it in the world. But McCarthy had spent over 1,000 hours working on that, easily. Thousands of hours on a product that sucks. He spent more time than a lot of you guys do to finish a novel. And your novel's probably better, but he wasn't worried about the product. He wasn't worried about what it was then. He was envisioning something bigger. He was working through it and adding these elements and spending time outside and saying, you know what? On the next rewrite, I should add in this scene or a similar one to the one I just read in this book. Then over time, these unconscious elements would manifest. The triune and outer dark, Judge Holden being the central character and the supernatural figure. These things weren't there even in draft 3 and 4 of his most famous novels, but they came. And the same can be true with the novel you're working on now or just your writing in general. You have no idea sometimes how close you are to the next level. And if you stop, if you are discouraged, if you listen to people that say you can't do it, then you'll never reach it. And so don't be in the graveyard of plateaus, of people who never reached the next level and gave up because they thought it's linear. Writing isn't a linear progress. It's not something like where you're at the gym and you kind of go up. Suddenly you're up. Sometimes you go down for a little bit. It's not predictable. And so there you have it, everybody. Go join my writing school. That is free if you are interested. Check out my Instagram where I'm posting a ton of unique content that isn't on YouTube for writers. And I will see you guys very soon in the next video.